Everybody, it's the Cartoon Kid back again with another fantastic fanfic idea. And today I'm bringing you the Owl Mask. I know you're thinking, another crossover between the Owl House and the Mask? This really, well, what can I say? I like the combination. And we, so he's like the owl lady and a chick. Meanwhile, back at the Owl House. And that third one, I can't remember the title to. Well, let's just say it got me interested in the idea. But I digress. Story. Luz Noceda had always been drawn to the strange and unusual, but nothing could have prepared her for what she found in the depths of the confirmatorium. While who helped King and Ida escape from their imprisonment, she'd wandered into a restricted vault filled with confiscated artifacts from across the realms. There, sitting innocently on a dusty shelf between a crystal ball that showed people's deepest fears and a book that screamed when opened, it was an ancient wooden mask. Its surface was carved with intricate swirling, swirling patterns that seemed to shift in the dim light. And despite its weathered appearance, it practically hummed with otherworldly energy. Ida's voice echoed through the corridors as alarms blared, urging haste. Without thinking, Luce grabbed the mask and stuffed it into her backpack. Something about it called to her, the same way magic had always called to her, but stronger, more primal. Back at the owl house, Luce examined her prize in the privacy of her room. The mask felt warm in her hands, almost alive. Ancient runes covered its surface. Not that she was learning to read, but something far older. The moment the word touched her skin, the world exploded into sensation. Power coursed through her veins like liquid fire. She her consciousness expanding beyond the confines of human limitations. When the transformation completed, Luce looked into the mirror and gasped. Her reflection showed a figure char- of impossible charm and manic energy. Her skin had taken on a slight greenish tint, her eyes glowed with golden light, and her smile had become impossibly wide and sharp. But more than her appearance had changed. She could feel magic flowing through her like never before. Wild and intoxicating. The words that escaped her lips came out the voice that was hers, but somehow more confident, more powerful, more dangerous. She felt utterly unstoppable. The masked Luz discovered she could manipulate magic in ways that should have been impossible for a human. Glyphs formed at her will without paper, was bent to her distress, her desires. In reality, itself seemed more flexible. She practiced in secret, revealing in the rush of unlimited magical potential. During a particularly boring class at Hexide, Luz decided to test her new abilities. With the mask hidden beneath a carefully created illusion, she began subtly altering the lesson. When Professor Homunculus droned on about potion theory, Luz made his cauldron sprout tiny dancers that performed an elaborate musical number. The teacher was sputtered in, in confusion, as his demonstration turned into a live Broadway spectacular. Lou spit back a wild giggle. This was better than any fantasy she ever imagined. But as the chaos escalated, students' desks transforming into carnival rides, textbooks, singing opera, the ceiling becoming a starry night sky, she realized she was losing control. When what started as harmless pranks began to escalate, the mask's influence whispered to her constantly, encouraging her to push boundaries, to take what she wanted, to show everyone just how powerful she could be. Luce found herself staying transformed longer and longer, the line between her true self and the masked persona blurring. When Emperor Bello sent scouts to investigate reports of uncontrolled wild magic, Luce decided to handle them personally. Still wearing the mask, she confronted them with a display of power that left the scouts fleeing in terror. Their memories scrambled and their equipment transformed into rubber chickens. She cackled to herself, floating through the air surrounded by spirals of green energy. The rush of absolute power was intoxicating, addictive. Each use made her crave more, but Ida had been watching. Ina cornered Luce in the market square, her expression deadly serious, even more serious than Luce had ever seen her. The older witch had noticed everything. The way Luce constantly touched her backpack, checking to make sure the mask was there, the wild magic surges, the way her personality shifted when she thought no one was looking. Luce's hand instinctively went to her bag when confronted. The mask had given her everything she'd ever wanted. Real magic, real power. She could protect everyone now. She could accomplish anything. But Ida's weathered face showed only concern and recognition. The look of someone who understood curses that promised power all too well. The intervention was gentle but firm. Ida had seen this before, had lived through something similar herself. She knew that such power always took more than it gave. That night, Luce reluctantly agreed to research the mask with Ida and King. What they discovered in the ancient text of the Boiling Isles was disturbing. The mask wasn't just a magical artifact, it was a prison containing the chaotic essence of a trickster entity from another realm. A being of such power and madness that it had been banished from its own world. The texts call it the Mask of Loki, a relic of immense power that granted its wearer incredible magical abilities at the cost of their sanity and soul. Each use made the wearer more susceptible to the entity's influence until they became nothing more than a vessel for its chaotic will. Luce protested that she was still herself, though even as she thought it, she could feel the mask calling to her from across the room where she'd reluctantly placed it. The king pointed questions made her pause when she had last helped someone without expecting something in return. When had she last felt satisfied without the mask? She couldn't remember. Word of the mysterious masked figure had reached Emperor Bellows, who recognized the magical signature from ancient prophecies. The mask represented a wild card that could either serve his purposes or destroy them entirely. He dispatched his most trusted agent, the Golden Guard, to retrieve it. Hunter arrived at the Owl House under the cover of darkness, but Luce was waiting for him. She donned the mask again despite her promises to Ida, unable to resist its allure when faced with a real threat. Her transformed voice echoed with supernatural power as she greeted the intruder. The battle that followed was unlike anything the Boiling Isles had ever seen. Ida's Hunter's artificial magic clashed against Luce's chaos-infused spells, reality warping and bending around their conflict. Trees grew to twisted spirals, gravity shifted directions at random, and the very air crackled with impossible energies. But in the midst of the fight, Luce caught a glimpse of Hunter's face beneath his mask, young, afraid, desperate. The sight triggered something in her, a memory of who she used to be before the mask's influence took hold. The word it escaped Luce's lips as a crack in her voice, fighting against the mask's control. She commanded the chaos around them to freeze, and for a moment it obeyed. With tremendous effort, she reached up and began to pull the mask from her face. The, the entity fought back, its essence clinging to her consciousness like a parasite. Visions flashed through her mind. All the power she could have, all the people she could help or control, all the magic she could master. All she had to do was give in completely. Ida's voice cut through the supernatural He's as she and King arrived on the scene, calling Luce back to herself, reminding her why she'd come into the Boiling Isles in the first place. She'd come to learn magic, to help people, to find where she belonged. The truth hit Luce like a physical blow when she looked down at the unconscious hunter. She wasn't helping anyone anymore. She was just indulging in power for power's sake. Exactly what she'd always despised about bullies back in the human realm. With a final surge of will, Luce ripped the mask from her face and threw it to the ground. The backlash of severed magical connections sent her sprawling, her body convulsing as the entity's influence fought to maintain its hold. The mask seemed to scream in rage, its carved features twisting into an expression of fury. The entity, he spoke of how perfect they'd been together, how they could have ruled this realm and a thousand others. Lou struggled to her feet, weakly but firmly, declaring that she didn't want to rule anything. She just wanted to be herself. The masked power lashed out one final time, sending tendrils of green energy toward her, but this time Luce was ready, drawing on everything she learned about glyph magic, the pure, honest magic of the Boiling Isles. She created a barrier of light that dissolved into chaotic energy. The mask hissed, but about the impossibility of moral restraints, but Luce corrected its assumptions. She wasn't resisting, she was choosing, and there was a difference. In the aftermath, Hunter lay unconscious but alive, his staff shattered but his injuries manageable. Ida tended to his wounds while King exclaimed how the now dormant mask with professional interest. The question of what to do with the artifact loomed large. Destroying it might release the entity entirely, but keeping it meant someone else might find it and make the same mistake Luce had. She looked down at the mask, feeling a residual pull, but finding the strength to resist it. There had to be somewhere they could contain it permanently. Ida nodded thoughtfully, suggesting she might know a place. But first came the question of what to do with the unconscious visitor. Luce knelt beside the golden guard, gently removing his mask to reveal a face that couldn't have been much older than her own. Her decision was immediate and certain. They would help him, the same way Ida had helped her when she first arrived in the Boiling Isles. King pointed out that he was an agent of the Emperor, but Lou saw something different. He was a kid who'd been manipulated and used just like she'd been manipulated by the mask. Everyone deserved a chance to choose who they wanted to be. When Hunter awakened, he expected imprisonment or death. Instead, he found himself in a comfortable bed in the owl house, his wounds bandaged and a bowl of soup waiting on the nightstand. Lou sat nearby, looking more tired than he'd ever seen another person. The terrible power that had surrounded her during their battle was gone, leaving behind someone who seemed almost fragile in compassion. This simple question about why they'd help him received a equally simple answer. Luce knew what it was like to have something whisper in her ear, telling you that power was the answer to everything. She knew what it was like to wake up and realize you'd become someone you didn't recognize. Over the following days, Hunter learned about life in the Owl House. He saw how Ida cared for Luce and King, not through fear, yeah, or manipulation, but through genuine affection. He watched Luce struggle with the aftermath of her addiction to the mask's power, fighting cravings and working to rebuild relationships she damaged. Most importantly, he saw what it looked like when people choose to help each other, and not because they had to, but because they wanted to. Emperor Belos eventually came looking for his missing agent, arriving at the Owl House with a full contingent of Coven guards. He found Hunter standing beside Luce, Ida, and King, no longer wearing the Golden Guard uniform but simple clothes that somehow made him look years younger. Bellows addressed Hunter with the weight of paternal disappointment, questioning what had been done to him. Hunter's response was simple. They had given him a choice, something his former master never did. The Emperor's gaze shifted to Luce, and she felt a chill that had nothing to do with magic. He acknowledged her as the human child who'd found the mask of Loki, expressing his trust that she'd learned the folly of power without purpose. Lucy's response carried hard-won wisdom about the difference between purpose and choice, about how purpose without choice was just another kind of prison. Belle smiled without warmth, calling her philosophical but ultimately irrelevant. His demand for the mask was met with Ida's characteristic defiance, claiming to be fresh out of world-ending artifacts. What followed was a battle that tested everything Luce had learned about magic, friendship, and herself. Without the mask's power, she had to rely on her growing mastery of glyph magic and, more importantly, the support of her found family. Ida's wild magic, King's surprising tactical knowledge, and Hunter's immediate understanding of combat techniques combined with Luce's creativity and determination. Months later, the mask of Loki rested in a specially warded vault deep beneath the Titan's skull, surrounded by glyphs of binding and protection that would keep it contained for centuries to come. Luce visited it sometimes, partly to make sure the containment held, and partly to remind herself of how close she'd come to losing everything that mattered. The boiling isles had changed, with Hunter's defection and inside knowledge. The resistance against Emperor Bellows had gained crucial advantages. More importantly, the story of The human girl who found ultimate power and voluntarily gave it up had begun to spread, inspiring others to question the systems that controlled their lives. Luz still practiced magic every day, but now she appreciated the slow, steady growth of genuine learning over the instant gratification of borrowed power. Hoglyph's work that Hoglyph's Hoglyph work had improved dramatically, and she'd even begun developing entirely new combinations that bridged human creativity with Boiling Isle's magical theory. One evening, as she and Ida sat on the roof of the owl house watching the sunset paint the sky in impossible colors, Ida asked if she had any regrets. Luz considered the question seriously. The mask had given her a taste of power beyond imagination, and sometimes, in her weaker moments, she still felt its call. But looking around her friends, her chosen family, the life she built through her own choices rather than magical shortcuts, the answer was easy. She had none, and meant it completely. In the distance, the boiling isle stretched towards the horizon, full of mysteries yet to be discovered and magic yet to be learned. And Luz Noceda, human girl turned witch, looked forward to earning every bit of it the hard way, with patience, practice, and the help of those who loved her for who she chose to be, not what power she could wield. The mask might have promised her everything, but she'd already found something better herself. And yeah, that is essentially my best attempt at yet another crossover between the Owl House and the Mask. But I digress. Anyway, this is pretty much all I got for right now, so please be sure to like, favorite, and subscribe if you kind of like this idea. And if you do like it, want to use it, maybe improve on it a little bit, all I simply ask is credit for the idea. Oh, and before I forget, if you want to read my stories with no dialogue, check out my DeviantArt page. It's The Mask 2002. All in one, by the way. Okay, bye!